Hello, my name is Chris Parham, and this is my final research project at the Dynamic Media Institute at MassArt 2021. My project is called Black Death on Cameraphone Creates a New Business Model, which is mobile journalism. And this project and the argument that I'm making is that at all the protests that we've been seeing since 2014 and earlier, where people have been using their smartphones to take photographs, to take film and video, especially of police brutality, those are our mobile journalists, the way that I see this. And I say that primarily because the people there at the protests are there for one thing and one thing only, and they're there for reform and help with police issues. And they are usually the first ones on the front line when it comes to having photographs, being basically mobile journalists. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with two high-profile cases of police brutality. One that happened, the very first police brutality video that went viral in 1999 of Rodney King being beaten in LA. And it was George Holliday who was taking the film from his porch. And George is a licensed retired plumber, I believe. And this picture, of course, and these images shocked the world because it was so blatant, it was so horrifying, and so on. So again, this was the first police brutality video that went viral, along with, of course, George Floyd, the very latest police brutality video of him being murdered in Minnesota. And the person who took the photographs, Darnella Frazier, says she's been traumatized since the beginning because she stood right there and had her phone on this for 9 minutes and 43 seconds, the amount of time that it took for him to kill George Floyd. And see, what we're going to do is I want to talk about, for instance, things that happened. For instance, the first camera phone by Samsung released in fall of 2000. And also, too, the iPhone 4 introduced the first front-facing camera in 2010 with the ability to start taking selfies. So with that in mind, we're going to be talking about excerpts and quotes from Bearing Witness While Black by Dr. Alicia V. Richardson, PhD from Howard University. And her argument is basically theorizing African-American mobile journalism after Ferguson. And she's talking about basically how the camera phone has become the new tool that black people need basically, and what's going on today in terms of police brutality and being able to film it. And for instance, in all the recent accounts of the eyewitness videos of black men and women dying by cops, the videographers have been black or Latino and poor. So for instance, this photograph here, you're seeing Amnesty International volunteers at the Ferguson uprising using camera phones. So the bulk of the people who are out here taking the photographs are black and Hispanic and poor. But they are also the victims of this as well. And a lot of them feel that that could be me, basically. And that's why they feel the reason to take out their camera phones and start shooting as soon as they see this start happening. And in Ferguson 2014, you could have been arrested for filming cops and facing real jail time. That includes the press, not just a protester mobile journalist. So for instance, this gentleman, Antonio French, was a former Ferguson alderman who got in a lot of trouble because his fellow aldermen didn't like him being involved in the protests after Michael Brown was killed in 2014. But he went out there with his camera phone like a lot of people did at that time, and he did what he had to do to take pictures to prove to the world what was going on in Ferguson in 2014 after Michael Brown was murdered. And then for the man of color, the cell phone is the closest visual production tool that he can muster to protect himself from news narratives that try to frame his demise incorrectly. So for instance, we have a photograph here of a protester with a camera phone at Ferguson. So in other words, the people who are out here shooting the video are showing their narrative of what's really going on compared to the press, which has a habit of basically siding up with police officers and definitely not siding with the people who are protesting inhumane treatment and unjust. For instance, just of course what happened with George Floyd and with Rodney King and other high-profile murders of black people. And here, for instance, a black witness says, "When I saw the Rodney King video, I thought of myself lying on that ground and getting beat." And this relates to the whole idea of mobile journalism and the people that take the pictures, in that they could be the victims next, and they fully realize that. And that's one of the biggest fears, and how it plays on people's mentally, psychologically, and so on. And it can be very painful, because that could be me, as they say, or that could be somebody I know. Just like Darnella Frazier said during testimony, when she said she saw George Floyd as her father, and that's what really scared her. And when African American witnesses in Ferguson took to the streets, for instance, to protest Michael Brown's murder, they did use mobile devices and social media, because that was the only way that they could get the word out there in terms of a race not being believed no matter what happens. And we're even seeing now that even with videotape, it still seems like it's not good enough, as in the case of Eric Gardner, who was choked to death in New York City in 2015. And for instance, I aver that African Americans, and this is Mrs. Richardson talking, that is, from her book. I aver that African Americans of any socioeconomic class tend to see themselves in that battered body of another black person and these kinds of amateur footage. So for instance, with this photograph here, Sandra Bland, who was killed by, found dead in a police station in Texas, she took a picture of the officer who said, "I'm going to light you up." And that was used as evidence in his trial. So this is what we mean about how the black body and the black mind, no one is taking it seriously. There are no rights, it seems, and it doesn't really matter. And that's what the problem is in this situation. And of course, also African Americans have adopted Twitter as their social networking platform of choice for breaking news, and also dealing with Black Twitter, because Black people tend to speak among themselves, and they have just as much images on their phones as the next person, and that's why Black Twitter was created. And again, like I said, the rise of Black Twitter as a news outlet. Is it being taken seriously? Are Black people out there getting the word out about police brutality and what's going on? And for instance, in this situation, Blacks made witnesses by the media become activated by their cell phones to leak recorded footage of Freddie Gray's last moments. Freddie Gray, who was killed in 2015 in Baltimore, and this is a picture of him being put into the police van moments before he was killed. So Black people have the power to basically get the word out there that this is what's going on and it's not right. So that's why they leaked the footage of him being put into the police van. And also, many of the frontline cell phone videos that have surfaced to showcase police brutality have galvanized distant Black witnesses to form organizations such as Campaign Zero, Color of Change, and Black Lives Matter. So people are wondering where this is coming from. It is creating a difference. It is creating a narrative, a talk about what we need to do and what's going on, and why we need to keep our cameras going out here to record police brutality and everything else that's going on when it comes to the bodies of Black people being broken. And in conclusion, we have even fewer studies showing about the impact that Black witnesses and other groups have on the professional newsroom. In other words, are Black people who are out here taking these photographs, and Latino people, are they being hired by the networks? Do the networks see mobile journalism as their own invention, or do they see it as the camera phone by Black folks when they're looking at police brutality? And are they adopting it as their own business model? That is mobile journalism. There are companies out there such as Mojo that are getting the word out there in terms of all you need is a cell phone, this, that, and the other. But Black people, all they need is a cell phone, but they also just need someone to believe them. So for instance, this is Eric Garner being arrested by New York City cops in 2015, and the photographer, Ramsey Orta, was put into Rikers Island as retaliation for filming this. And he is still in litigation with the city of New York right now as we speak. And these are my resources that I have here concerning police killings and people using their smartphones, how George Floyd died, different types of things. And it's really important for me to get that out there in terms of, this is the basis of my argument, that the real mobile journalists are the protesters and the activists that have been out there from day one, going back to Trayvon Martin, basically, and up until now. And again, what type of model are news agencies setting? Are the news agencies using this for their own good, or they're using this to uncover actual police brutality without, like they always tend to do, side with the police officers. Again, this is my final program, my final project, excuse me. And I just wanted to say thank you very much for your time, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.